Hi again, everybody. I'm Jamie Allison, and this is the Big Idea, Big Moves podcast. This is the destination for high performers and for people looking for whole life success. We talk to people from different genres, different niches, just people doing really interesting things in their space that we can hear a bit about their journey and what they're experiencing, and hopefully take away some of those things for our own lives as well. So we talk to CEOs, entrepreneurs, lots of fitness people, just people trying to live healthy, full lives. And again, hopefully we'll learn a few things along the way as well. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that we have a relationship with Epitome Sportswear. And what really fits nicely for us is that it is not just about kind of high performance sports. There is that stuff if you need to, but it's also just being comfortable and being able to do the things that we do in our everyday lives. So it might be going on a hike, it might be going to your son or daughter's hockey game at this point in time. Some of those things that I know everybody really enjoys. But what's also important is that they like to give back to the community they serve as well. And so they're working to impact the inequities in opportunity for girls and women in sport. And for that reason, a portion of their profits go directly to organizations and initiatives that support girls in sport. So if you go into our Instagram profile, you can see a link there. There's also a code, it's BIBM, and you can put that in and get a discount. Or just go directly to Epitome Sportswear. That's EPITOME sportswear.com. And so today, really happy to have Lauren Rudick with us. She's an internationally celebrated yoga instructor and the founder of Yoga Academy International. With over 15 years in the industry, she's traveled across 6 continents, from what I understand, visited over 50 countries, and she shares her really dynamic and heartfelt teaching style with tens of thousands of students. And Lauren has also been featured in fitness and wellness publications like Women's Health and Optimyz magazine. So we were able to catch her kind of in kind of different things that she's doing and moving around and things like that at all the time. So again, thanks for taking a few minutes with us today, Lauren.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for that beautiful intro. And I'm really excited that Epitome is sponsoring this podcast because they promote women in sports and equity in sports. I love that. So
Yeah,
very
yeah,
cool.
yeah. They're a great partner that way, and we like to be able to we focus on giving space for a lot of kind of whether it's female athletes or people that are inspirational to those people too. So yeah, great for that. And speaking of that, I guess you've had a real kind of journey from a yoga perspective and an athletic kind of perspective. I think it'd be really interesting for people to hear just a bit about what that journey has looked like for you, because you've got a kind of a big kind of academy and you've done lots of things around the world. But I know that doesn't just happen either. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the journey to get here, and we'll start there.
Sure. Well, my personal journey to how I got to where I am today as an international yoga teacher and owning a yoga school is a super long story that I won't get into now, but
Yeah.
anyone can follow me and find out that story. But I love that you asked it from like a sports perspective because no one has asked me that before. The truth is, athleticism and being active has always been a huge part of my life. My parents met at the gym.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Um, yeah, my father like chased my mother around the track until she agreed to go out with him, was basically the story. And my parents were very sporty growing up, and so being in sports and in athletics was always a huge part of my life. And then that dwindled, as happens with a lot of kids. Like when I was a teenager, I was so fortunate that my parents never said no to me with anything athletic I wanted to do. So I did, gymnastics, ballet, dance, swimming. Did competitive diving for 2 years, which by the way, I lost every competition, like last place. I was not a good diver. I last place in every competition. Um, I did like swimming lessons and like literally anything. I said like, oh, climbing. I did climbing when I was younger. Like anything I wanted to do, my parents said yes, and if it was active, which is very cool, and I feel very fortunate about that. And then I actually was running competitively in high school, and turned out I was really naturally talented at it. I joke, can I swear on this podcast?
Sure you can. Yeah.
Okay, I have like a potty mouth. I joke that like my ass built a yoga school because like my butt is kind of what got me all that attention on Instagram years ago. I didn't even know that was a thing until it became a thing. But anyway, turns out like my butt is like kind of why I was such a good runner, because my old track coach said I had like this explosive start time thanks to my glutes,
Yeah.
is what he said. But yeah, I was like naturally an amazing sprinter, which I didn't know until I ran track in high school. And I honestly just did it to like get out of school because the track meets were like a full day. And I was like, sweet, I can skip school. And I won all the track meets and I ended up being like the provincial champion at like the
Oh.
100 meters when I was 16. But anyways, then I got a lot of attention and notice, and they wanted me to start training for like international meets, and I've never told this story actually. They wanted to train me for like more international meets, and I just didn't want to do it. You know, I was 16, and it was like I didn't want to wake up at 5 in the morning to go train and all this kind of
Hmm.
stuff. So I quit track, and I didn't do anything until college, where who doesn't start drinking in college? And I
Yeah.
gained some weight
Yeah.
as a little party girl, eating, this is so Canadian. I was like eating poutine and drinking gains weight. And so I decided to join a gym,
Yeah.
and I joined a gym that had the cheapest membership, which was $20 a month.
Hmm.
And I couldn't use the weight room or the machines, but I could go to the classes because they were trying to make a community. And I tried a class called yoga because it fit into my schedule. And from that first yoga class, like I was in. It was
Yeah.
so beautiful. I was hooked. It was hard, but it felt like dancing, but it felt athletic and I felt graceful. Um, yeah, and then I just started going to yoga 2 to 3 times a week for the next 5 years throughout, college. I did college and university in Canada where I live. We have an associate's degree. So I did associates and then university. And eventually after university, I had no life plan. I got dumped. I was miserable, and ran away to yoga school, and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Changed my
and
life
it's
forever.
interesting that I mean, you said you hadn't, and I hadn't heard that about your running. I guess that's because you haven't really talked about that too much.
No,
But it's interesting how you decided to completely kind of give it up without kind of doing, that was that hard to do?
no,
Like,
I actually hated it. Like I
yeah,
was really, I loved the competitions because I always won. I was very good at it, but I
yeah.
hated the training. And
Mm.
to this day, I still hate running. Like I every summer on a beautiful day, I like put my running shoes on and I'm like, I'm gonna go for a jog. And I'll go like 1 kilometer and be like, fuck this, I hate it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was never a distance runner, right? Like always a
Yeah,
sprint.
yeah.
But no, I hate it.
And okay, so juxtaposed with that is you found that you really liked yoga, and also you mentioned there that it's hard. And I think that's one thing for a long time, and not so much now, but for a long time people were, oh well, it's a relaxation technique, which it is, but it's so much more than that for people. And now you see a lot of, high level athletes that spend a lot of time doing kind of yoga practice and things like that, not just for the mindfulness kind of benefits of it, but for the athletic performance benefits as well. Have you seen that evolve over the time that you've been in it, that people's perception maybe of what you can use yoga for?
Oh, 100%. When I first started my yoga career, I used to wear this t-shirt at all the festivals I taught at. I would wear a t-shirt that said boys need yoga too.
Mm, yeah,
And I started a program called Yoga for Hockey Players, and it was like pulling teeth to get guys into yoga at the beginning.
yeah,
But full circle moment, when the Beijing Olympics happened during the pandemic, was that 2021, 2022? The Canadian Olympic hockey team asked me to teach yoga for the guys in Beijing. So I got to teach yoga to the men's Olympic hockey team, which
yeah,
was incredible. And it really does show like how helpful it is. And to be honest, those men have sent me, messages it's really cool to get messages from like these 6'3", 6'5", like big dude hockey players just being like, thank you so much for that yoga class. Like I noticed the difference on the ice. My balance is better and all this kind of thing. So yeah, it's
yeah,
really helpful and it's great for sports. And the mindfulness aspect is great. I mean, sports psychology and mindfulness in sports has been around for ages,
right.
visualization, creative techniques, slowing down the body, breath work, meditation, that kind of stuff. And it's really nice to see like also the physical practice come in, and people are, into stretching and into biomechanics now, and yeah, all that stuff, all that movement.
Yeah,
It's fun.
yeah, yeah, and I guess you were at that point also inspired to kind of create this yoga academy, and where you not only are you doing kind of retreats, but you're also doing a lot of teaching and kind of spreading that message as well. Um, where did that come from? I mean, is that something that you just saw? Okay, it's an opportunity, or is it where was the what was the catalyst of that? I guess for you.
The idea of Yoga Academy actually came to me in a meditation. It was like a download, is the best way I can describe it. But essentially my yoga teacher training, which was like 16 years ago already,
Yeah.
it changed my life forever. It gave me tools to live happier and more positively and change the course of my life. Like I always thought the direction of my life would be, grow up, go to university, get married, work a 9 to 5, have some kids, live in the suburbs. That was the life path that I was on and that was presented to me as the options. And when I went to that yoga school, I was introduced to an international group of people who were doing something else, something off the beaten path, something different. I never thought women could travel alone and that was safe. I never thought there was other life paths out there that included, working and traveling. Or, I remember one of these women at the yoga teacher training was like a dive instructor in Tulum. Was it Tulum? I don't remember where. I think it was Tulum. But yeah, she was like a dive instructor and I was just like so inspired. I was like, whoa, there's other ways to do it. There was two women that had driven from Vancouver to Baja, Mexico to take training. Like they drove by themselves on a surf trip to come take yoga teacher training. Like one of them was a massage therapist working her way down. The other one was a hairdresser cutting hair along the way. Like I just didn't know that existed. And so when I started doing yoga teacher trainings, and I wanted to say this, I did not do yoga teacher trainings until I had been teaching yoga for 8 years. There's a lot of people these days that just are like, oh, I've done my 500 hours of training. I'm gonna teach teacher trainings. Like, no, I'm sorry, we're not ready for that. Yoga is a huge practice and a huge branch of knowledge and information that has like so many different lineages and so much to touch on. Like I've been practicing yoga for 20 years and I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface.
Yeah.
I'll teach what I know, but to be involved in the practice for a year or be a teacher for a year and then run trainings, I think is a little bit hubris. But anyway, I had been I'd been teaching for 8 years full time, and then I said, okay, I'll run this training because people were asking me. And the reason why I started yoga teacher trainings in the way that I did, which was like an immersive program, bringing people into nature on the beach, was because I wanted to like pay forward the experience that I had at my training. I had never been in a supportive community like that before, where we were given permission to have like a relationship with God or the universe that was completely adogmatic, that was just our own and personal spirituality without dogma. I had never been introduced to that. When first time I was introduced to like the music of yoga, kirtan, chanting, meditation, anatomy, the whole lifestyle of being compassionate to yourself and others, instead of beating ourselves down for our failures or being hard on ourselves. Like this was all new to me at the
Yeah.
time. Now mindfulness and yoga, like it's been seeping into all kinds of places in the world, which is amazing, amazing that it's so accessible. But at the time for me, as a 23-year-old who didn't grow up in a place that had a lot of yoga, like this
Mhm.
was bananas enlightening. And when I started teacher trainings, I just wanted to pay that forward and give people that same gift. Eventually, I started Yoga Academy that I just had this vision. I had a vision of people, men and women of all shapes and colors and sizes and ages, just like holding hands and dancing and meditating and being on the beach and like me speaking to them and having a team of teachers. And it was just such a strong conviction that I was like, I need to start an international yoga academy. I was
Yeah.
like, it's going to be called the International Yoga Academy, but that domain was taken. So I called it Yoga Academy International, which abbreviates to
Yeah.
yeah. So
No,
there you
that's
go.
awesome. I, how much, I mean, you talked about how, bringing people from different backgrounds all over the world, um, because you've also traveled all over, how much has that impacted your yoga practice or your yoga teaching by being exposed to different cultures and different people and the way people also probably even practice yoga in different parts of the world. How's that impacted you personally?
Oh, a ton. I mean, one thing that's cool is like yoga brings people together. The word yoga actually means yoke or union, to bring together. And yoga really does bring people together of all colors, shapes, sizes, and cultures. Like when you're on the yoga mat in child's pose, we're all the same. When we're lying in shavasana, laying there with our eyes closed, breathing, we're all the same. There's no difference. And what's been really cool is to see that like everybody that I've encountered across cultures can appreciate a moment of mindfulness, closing your eyes and breathing slowly. Everybody can appreciate a good stretch. Everyone can appreciate getting stronger. I will also say, like, I take little bits and tidbits of all the different cultures, um, and places I've been in and incorporate them into my trainings and retreats. So for example, I do a yin yoga training and a luxury yoga retreat in Morocco every year. And we use Moroccan traditions and culture as as part of the groundwork for that retreat. So, for example, um, a big part of Moroccan culture is going to the hammam, which is the bathhouse. And so we take our students to a traditional but very luxurious bathhouse where they can experience that, you know, surrender of being washed by someone else. And like part of yoga, there's something in yoga called Ishvara Pranidhana, which literally means surrender. Um, or the example of, sweating out and detoxifying yourself. And a lot of yoga is detoxification as well. I don't like the word toxic detox because it means you're toxic, but you know what I mean? Like just getting out
Yeah.
the stuff you
Yeah.
don't need. We do like a henna party because that's how in Morocco, that's how they celebrate is with henna. And so
Yeah.
we celebrate with henna because it's part of Morocco. So things like that. Um, One thing is I spent 5 years in Nicaragua running trainings. I still run yoga trainings in Nicaragua. It's a very special place to me. And one thing I learned about that culture is like how generous people are with themselves and their time.
Hmm.
And it encourages me to be more generous with my time and myself. And just like the smallest acts of kindness, like a smile and saying hello to someone can just really brighten someone's day. And I think that also helps with my hospitality as a yoga retreat leader. Um, and yeah, like we've had students from all over. Recently, I just had my first Pakistani student, which is really
Yeah.
cool. She just did a training with us.
Yeah.
But from like, we've had people from like Iran and Israel and France and Germany and Argentina and Chile and Mexico and New Zealand and South Africa, Botswana, Kenya, like everywhere in the world you can imagine, Georgia, Poland, Russia, the Ukraine, like everywhere in the world you can imagine. Singapore, we've had students from there,
Yeah.
which is like really, really special and amazing. And I mean, again, like when you strip it down and take away the things that separate us, we realize like humans are just humans and we're all the same. We all just want to be loved and seen and celebrated and honored. That's what everybody craves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And obviously when you're in the midst of doing kind of one of these, whether it's a retreat or something like that, um, you're doing the practice, you're doing the part that you love. Um, when you do a lot of this stuff as an entrepreneur or that end of it, there's also a whole bunch of other things that you probably had to learn that you probably have to kind of struggle through like any other entrepreneur. There's lots of people that listen that are entrepreneurs and probably tap into something like you're doing just to try to escape from that a little bit. So what's that like for you to be able to try to balance that, knowing that there's what you do in the practice, but also all the things that you do to be able to organize and create the experiences that are there too.
Yeah, thank you for saying that and recognizing that. I think if I do it successfully, it looks effortless.
Yeah.
I've had yoga retreat centers be like, wow, you're so calm. And I'm like, sweet, because on the inside, I feel like I am dying. Like
Yeah.
on the inside, I'm a mess. It's chaos. I'm lucky that I've been at this for a long time, right? I've led 50 yoga retreats at this point, 51 actually,
Mm.
but 50 yoga retreats in like a dozen countries. So I'm pretty good at like troubleshooting and the back end and the but I mess up all the time. Like recently someone wanted to come on a retreat and my website was glitching and it was my fault. The website was glitching, it was my fault. And then one of the links wasn't working and she decided not to come because she felt it was too disorganized. And I'm like, well, that sucks. Like I just lost three people. She was going to come with two friends. I'm like, I just lost three clients because of my fuck up. And that's
Yep.
hard, but you live and you learn. And I also had to recognize that I was going through a lot as well on the side personally. Um, and my yoga practice really teaches me to like have compassion for myself in those moments and breathe
Hmm.
and I'm very fortunate that I feel like I have these tools because of the yoga practice. Like I have these tools to help me through the entrepreneur journey because it is like so up and down. And how do I balance it? I mean, crying, meditating, breathing. I've gotten myself in the habit. Unfortunately, I'm in Canada now and it's been really cold. It's winter,
Hmm.
but
Yep.
I've gotten myself in the habit of like when I'm bored, I go for a walk. When I'm frustrated, I go for a walk. When I'm uninspired, I go for a walk. When I'm sad, I go for a walk. And that's been really helpful.
Hmm.
Very helpful. Just getting your body moving, getting your blood
Yep.
flowing, getting out into nature. So that's something I try to do. But I'm also equally good at numbing myself out with like Netflix,
Yeah.
which I'm
Well,
not proud of.
yeah. Well,
But that's the
hey,
thing with the
that's
entrepreneurial journey,
yeah. I mean, many people I'm sure are can kind of connect with that as well and understanding it, and maybe that's also a tactic. Is okay. Well, maybe try to get outside, even if it is cold like it is right now. To get outside and freshen things up a bit.
Can I share something else on that line?
Sure. Yeah.
So I will say the last 2 years in my business have been the worst years ever.
Yeah.
Um, these are the last 2 years I have been in the red, majorly in the red,
Yeah.
and gotten myself into some debt, which is frustrating. And I've been looking for jobs, even corporate jobs, thinking like, okay, I need to do something else. This isn't working.
Yeah.
Um, and one thing that's really important as an entrepreneur, I think, is like, how do we measure success?
Mm.
And for me, my success was never tied to a number. It was tied to a lifestyle. And if I could achieve a lifestyle where I felt free, I mean, if we do like there's like core values quizzes you can do. And one of my biggest core values is freedom. And it's funny, like for some people it's family, and community. And I couldn't believe it. I kind of felt like an asshole. And I was like, oh, my biggest core value is freedom. I'm a jerk. But it's true. Like my biggest core value is freedom. And when I can live a life where I feel free, that means freedom of travel to be in beautiful places and a lifestyle where I feel surrounded by wonderful people and being in nature and being active outdoors. That's when I feel most happy and most successful. And if I have a lifestyle that, or if my career and my business like provides for that, I still feel successful. So like I have been financially in the worst place of my life in the last 2 years. I can't believe I'm admitting this on a podcast. How many people listen
Yeah.
to your podcast?
Yeah.
Shit.
Enough. It's
Enough,
all
eh?
over,
Yeah,
but
great. Hey,
that's
world.
okay.
Which, and
I
like, I normally people would feel like a failure, right? Like, my business, quote unquote, like failed this year. And I had to reassess and reevaluate. I took 2 full months to do nothing and say, what do I want to, and apply for other jobs and say, what am I want to do with my life? Like, do I want to keep pushing this business that like might not fruit?
Yeah.
Or do I want to pivot and do something totally different? Um, and I am pivoting a little bit with the offerings a little bit, but like what I did realize is this is still what brings me joy. And when I get to teach yoga in beautiful spaces to wonderful people and surround myself in great communities and live these amazing travel experiences with people that are appreciative and grateful, I feel successful.
Yeah.
And the money stuff will come. And also I will say this. I heard this in another podcast. I don't remember which one, but it was like a money podcast.
Yeah.
And they said on this podcast, if you are a farmer who owns an apple orchard, the orchard fruits once a year. It makes you money once a year. You don't curse out the tree the rest of the year. In the winter, when the tree has no leaves and it's in hibernation mode and it looks like all sticks, we don't look at this tree and say, fuck you, stupid tree. What have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
I'm going to chop you down because you're worthless. Yet we do this to ourselves in our business. And we tell our businesses, you're worth it. You're worthless. We tell our entrepreneurial journey, like, this is not fruitful. It's wrong. But really, your business is not going to bear fruit all the time. That's not realistic. Trees don't do that either. And so we have to be able to figure out how to like weather these storms and weather the winter months and get really, really resilient. And that's been my practice, at this season of my life right now is like, I need to get really, really resilient and say, okay, my business will probably pick back up.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, I'll pivot and do something else. But it doesn't mean I am a failure. And while I said, like I said before, like, oh, my business failed, my business actually did not fail. It went through an entrepreneurial cycle.
Yeah. I
And that's okay.
yeah, there will be tons of people who listen and hear that and actually are probably very thankful that you're being so authentic about it because that is the experience of most entrepreneurs at some point. If you have something long enough, you're probably going to go through this type of a spell. So it's you have to adapt, to build resilience, and just know you're going to get through it at a certain period of time. All those things, that's pretty normal from it doesn't mean it's any easier to go through though. If you are in that situation, it's difficult, and that's why
Yeah.
so
And
many.
apparently every like millionaire and billionaire has failed at one point in
Right,
their lives
right,
or more.
yeah,
Like Lewis Howes, I'm really inspired by him. He like
yeah.
spent 3 months or something like living on his sister's couch,
Yeah, yeah. And,
you
well,
know.
I think almost everybody we've had on the podcast, especially somebody who's really, perceived as very successful and all those things, will say that I failed, 14 times before. One of them kind of hit or something. There are lots of things where there was somebody we had on not too long ago, and her whole thing is failing forward, and you fail and just
Yeah.
kind of move and pivot and figure out what the right next step is rather than looking back on it as something that slows you down and stalls you. So
Yeah. Oprah
absolutely,
says
yeah,
fail, fail harder, fail again. And
yeah,
there's
yeah,
someone else, a really wonderful quote. I don't know who said it. If I say something, it's going to butcher it. But it's something along the lines of my success isn't measured by how many times I won. It's measured by how many times I've failed and gotten back up again, or
yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And that's a good reminder, right? And so like right now I'm in this like winter season of my business and it's like,
Sure.
okay, I'm gonna pivot and it might pick up. And if it doesn't, like I'm still a great entrepreneur,
Sure. Yeah.
you know, and I'm still
Yeah.
a
Those
great yoga
skills
teacher
don't
and I'm
go
still a
away,
great
right?
yoga retreat leader. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so when you're looking at those things, I guess from a goal setting perspective, are you a person who it's interesting, it would be no, because you do enjoy freedom and kind of all of those things. Do you write your goals down? Do you have intentional goals? Do you just have intentions generally? How does that work for you?
Yes, all of the above. I usually do goals at the beginning of the year. I haven't done my goals for this year yet. I do have actually a free journal that if anybody wants to go to my website, they can
Ooh,
have it, or I can give you the link to get in the show notes.
sure.
I actually have a free journal that is like a reflection on the last year and then making moves forward and goals for the year forward.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it on New Year's, right? Like this idea of New Year's resolutions is like kind of silly to me. It's like you can actually decide to renew anytime you want. You can decide tomorrow to change your life. Which I'm actually Jewish, and the nice thing about being
Yeah.
Jewish is we get two New Year's as a year,
Yeah.
right? Like the Jewish New Year's in September, and then you have the other
Yeah.
New Year in January. And I'm like, this is great. Like twice a year, I get to do this part where I
Yeah.
reflect and
There's
be
this
like, what do I want?
prompt twice. Yeah.
Yeah, like every 6 months, I get to try again. But yeah, so I do set goals, but again, like in this season, I've been in like a total burnout. I really burnt out in August, and I took like 2 months where I was like, I'm not really setting 3 and 5 year goals right now. Like I have personal goals, but I've was kind of just like, okay, what do I want next? And
Yeah.
now I'm at the point where I'm a little bit flying by the seat of my pants. I'm still a little bit in survival mode, if I'm being honest. And I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to set goals for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
And just take little steps. And then once I can feel secure and solid and working towards my 3 month goals, then I'll set 1 year goals and 3 year goals and 5 year goals. In terms of intentions, yes, I set intentions all the time. Again, I have an intentional journal. I have an evening one and a morning one. I sometimes do them both, but I prefer personally the evening one. I've written them both. And the morning one also has like intentions for the day. And like
Mhm.
every morning you can wake up, it's on Amazon, it's cheap, it's like $8. And every morning you can wake up and set your intention for the day. And I love doing that because it just creates a little bit more thought about what you're going to put in. I also do intentions for the year. And funny, I did this last year. I wrote intention, and I don't even quite remember what they say, but I wrote intentions. Oh my God, this is going to be so yogi and woo woo. It's so woo. I did a really woo woo thing.
Yeah.
I I wrote intentions on little pieces of paper and
Yeah.
I rolled them up in little scrolls and I sunk them in a it was actually like a rum bottle that I found at the recycling
Yeah.
or a candy bottle. It was in Nicaragua. I sunk them in a rum bottle, filled that bottle with water, and put it outside in the full moon to like charge with the moonlight. And I just like left it there all year. And now it's like full of moss and disgusting things. But I'm pretty sure some of my intentions came true, but I can't really remember because I can't go back and read them. But I did it on purpose. It was like an act of faith for me. I've been
Yeah.
like struggling with kind of faith and struggling with, feeling like supported by the universe or whatever, feeling like I'm co-creating my destiny. And so I decided to just like surrender again. This I'm saying surrender again. This in yoga, Ishvara Pranidhana, I like surrender to the universe or like surrender to your destiny, surrender to spirit. I just like
Mm.
wrote down my little intentions and goals. I sunk them in this water bottle, put them to like charge in the moonlight, and was like, I can't go back and open them and I can't go back and read them. So like now it's kind of in God's hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, like I'm not a religious person. I am spiritual, but I'm not a religious person. But it actually felt kind of good to have a minute of faith with that and say like I can't go back and ruminate on this.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, very
Yeah.
cool. Um, okay, so you when you do these, you've built a lot of community, I guess, because you've had so many people go to the sessions, but also even what you do kind of in social media and things like that. It's very much built on building community and connection, and I'm wondering how important that has been for you to be able to do that just. For two reasons. One being your business success, obviously, because I'm sure you have many people that go, you know, back or based on kind of referrals from what people see in that community or hear. But also even the connection for yourself to be able to kind of develop yourself and your own practice, that kind of thing. What role does community play for you from that end?
You might make me cry. To be totally honest, looking back on my journey, I had like a pause of a few years ago, a year or two ago, and I thought about like why did I create this community and why? And I realized like I think it started from a very deep-seated insecurity where like I was looking for a place where I could belong. And I created a community where I got to belong. But in creating that, I created a space where everybody got to belong. And so it is really important to me to create a community. I'm not the best at keeping in touch with people, I'll be honest. I mean, I messaging me through Instagram is like really fun and I can WhatsApp and text and stuff, but I'm trying to get better at like when I think of someone actually calling them up. But the communities that have been built through my yoga school, through the yoga teacher trainings and the yoga retreats are so incredible and so profound. You know, we go through something together every single retreat, every yoga training. We go through a journey together and that really bonds people. And our WhatsApp groups are for life. And my students have reunions all over the world. And that is incredible. Um, they often come back on future retreats as a reunion that way. And so I've had groups that will come on 2, 3, 4 retreats, like, you know, and meet up
Yeah.
and yeah, again, like separately, they all have reunions all over the world. There's a group of 8 women on a training that meet up once a year somewhere. I think they did a reunion in Greece this year or Greece last year. They did Italy one year. It's like very, very special. And I feel very grateful and fortunate that I've created this space for other people to belong and to feel really seen. Like I said at the beginning, humans all just want to feel like loved and seen and heard and celebrated,
Yeah.
appreciated. Um, and it means a lot to me to have been able to create those spaces for other people because I know how good it felt in my
Yeah.
first training when I felt that for me. So yeah, honestly, I think it came from an insecurity because I often felt like the black sheep in my community
Mhm.
growing up, and I felt like
Yeah.
an outsider
Yeah.
because yeah, I just was never really comfortable in my skin, and I think that
Mhm.
discomfort came because I wasn't meant to be on that 9 to 5 typical suburb kind of path.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but yeah, no, community plays a huge, huge role in my life,
Yeah.
and it's so cool to see those bonds being created and see people really glow and flourish because they feel seen
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
first time sometimes. I mean,
Yeah.
again, that's what happened to me and my life's work basically has been to pay that forward.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I know when you read through kind of what people say about your retreats and things like that, a lot of them say like there's words like inspiring and you know you've obviously done things in being able to curate a transformative experience for a lot of those people. So uh, I think that's probably why they also feel that connection to the community in the same way you're talking about that it did for you. I mean, it's great that you're doing that for other people. That's got to feel good, I guess, from that perspective too, that they may feel that that was a catalyst for them to feel belonging and maybe something that changed their life as well.
It does. And like I've had people that are, you know, CEOs come through my trainings and say, like, I'm now going to implement this thing because that's when I felt the most seen and I felt the communication was the greatest. Like, I'm going to implement this thing. I've had students that have opened up their own yoga studios and now they're providing that for other people. It's very cool.
Yeah, yeah, very
Yeah.
cool. Um, so, maybe one thing that because I mean, you're very open with kind of your life and and your feelings and things like that. Is there something that people who have followed you already and know about you, is there something that you think would be surprising to them if they, that they maybe don't know about you? Even though that you're obviously probably pretty open even in your retreats and things like that because they're very personal, but is there something that you think, you know what, they might be surprised to know this about Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely very, very open, but I'm learning as I get older to keep a little bit more things privately to myself.
Hmm.
Um, it just helps me feel a little bit more protective and also, yeah, just kind of rein it in a bit more. I think what some people might find surprising, well, first of all, that on the outside I look like I'm an extremely successful entrepreneur who makes like tons of money at the yoga school, and that this year and last year, financially speaking, I was extremely
Sure.
successful in other ways in my life, but
Yeah.
I think it would be a surprise to know that I haven't paid myself in 2 years.
Yeah.
That would
That.
be shocking.
Yep.
Um, yep, and that I'm struggling and trying to figure out how to make
Yep.
ends meet now. And I think something else people would be kind of surprised to hear my students know this who have been on training, so I've talked about it openly, but I have struggled with my mental health quite a
Hmm.
bit over the course of my lifetime, specifically with depression and anxiety and depression. Anxiety had been new for me. in my last depressive episode. And honestly, for people who struggle with anxiety, I have so much more compassion now for them because that just like sucks. It's crippling.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
literally crippling. And I think people would be surprised to hear that I have in my life struggled with anxiety and depression that were so bad that I could not get out of bed, sometimes for
Hmm.
weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And
and
I
other
think lots
scary
of
things,
people
which I
would.
don't really want to talk about.
No, and a lot of people would hear that and kind of think because there are a lot of people that experience those things as well. So knowing that there's others that, and what people may see or hear isn't necessarily always what the person is experiencing as well, because you do have to do things for your business and all of those things, but that may not be personally what you're experiencing at home. So it's important for
Yeah,
people to know that.
yeah. I also will say this too, for anybody who struggles with their mental health and with depression and anxiety, like I have a friend who also struggles with depression, and we were hanging out, and she wrote to me after saying, like, apologizing basically for existing, saying, like, oh, I'm so sorry. I've been in such a negative place. I'm so sorry to bring you
Mm,
down. And I was like, I find your company such a pleasure and such a joy.
mm,
I didn't even notice you were struggling.
yeah,
Or like I didn't find you a downer at all. Like when you are sharing things that are so heavy on your heart, like I feel grateful that you're being transparent with me and open as a friend. And I think that was a really amazing learning moment for me because I isolate when I am struggling with my depression, and I will take myself so far away from people, which makes it worse.
hmm,
But that's kind of the perpetuating cycle of depression is like you'll isolate, you'll stay in bed, and then you're not creating dopamine, right? You're not creating the happy chemicals you need to get better
yeah,
um, in your brain. But that was a really amazing little learning moment because I isolate and realize like probably no one else dislikes my company when I'm
hmm,
disliking my company. The people
yeah,
who love me still love me. And it made me realize like don't isolate, really like force yourself to go out there and spend time with people who see you and who love you and who will care about you because they still find your company a pleasure and a joy, even
yeah,
if you feel like you're faking it in the moment, but it helps towards recovery.
yeah.
um and that's probably something people wouldn't know about me.
Oh, and
And
actually
about
that.
themselves, you know.
Yeah, and super important to share because and thank you for that because I know that takes some vulnerability to do that too. So really appreciate it. But I know there's lots of people that share that feeling and that's good advice as well. So um,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
sorry, yeah.
No, I think like over the years of me struggling with my own mental health, like something that really helped was just realizing like your brain just gets sick sometimes, and we get so hard on ourselves when we're struggling and when we're in it. Nobody gets angry with you when you break your arm
Yeah,
or when you get a cold. No one is like, fuck you, you idiot. I can't believe you have a cold. I don't want to hang out with you ever again because you have a cold. Yeah, that's like what our brain will tell us,
mm,
right?
yeah,
When we're in our mental health struggle. And again, like yoga really focuses on compassion, and compassion starts within, right? Heal yourself, you can heal the world, and be compassionate to yourself before you can be compassionate with others. And that really helps is like in those moments of struggle to say to yourself, like, I am still worth being around. I'm still a wonderful person. People still enjoy my company. Um, there's no reason to be upset with myself or down on myself because I'm sick. Just
yeah,
because I can't
yeah,
see the germs doesn't mean I'm not sick. Just because I can't see what's going on inside my brain doesn't mean it's not sick right now, you know?
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you again for sharing that. That's really important stuff. So, one of the things that, and this actually I think leads nicely into it, is that um, there are a lot of people who are probably intimidated to take a leap into, something more immersive, whether they're a retreat or whether it's just something where, what, I haven't done yoga a whole lot or something like that. And I really want to try something that's maybe a little deeper, maybe scary for some people, depending on what their experiences are. Do you have a couple of tips for people to, how do you get past that so we can kind of leave that with the audience as well?
Totally. Great question. My students at two trainings ago, they said jump and the net will catch you,
Hmm.
which like I don't know if that's always true. But when people ask me like how I get to where I am and how I did what I do, I'm like, it was sink or swim and I'm still breathing. Like
Mhm.
sometimes you just got to throw yourself in the deep end and figure it out. But what I will say is this, it is intimidating and scary to take a big leap into the unknown, but you'll figure it out. If you don't have a plan B, you will figure out plan A because you don't have a choice. And in terms of a retreat, like if you are interested, for example, I have a retreat coming up in Portugal. If you're interested in going to Portugal because you're curious about Portugal and the activities of the retreat seem fun, for example, practicing yoga every day and going on hikes along the coastline and doing a wine tasting and visiting ancient castles, like if that feels cool and interesting to you, everybody else coming on that experience has something in common with you because those are their interests too, right?
Yeah.
So that's something to realize. Like the traveling alone part is scary, the going on a retreat is scary, but everybody else who's there is also taking that same leap of faith. They are also just as scared, but also they share common interests. And I say this to my yoga teacher training students who are like, oh my God, this is the scariest thing. I just signed up for this 3 week training with people I don't know. I'm like, I'm scared too. We have to live with you for 3 weeks. I also hope you're cool. You know, every time I'm nervous, but I'm counting on the fact that we have all this stuff in common of like wanting
Yeah.
to be outside and wanting to better our lives and mindfulness and yoga. And you know what? It works. I've done 27 yoga trainings and 50 retreats. Like it works. It works. And, you know, we do have stuff in common and we do enjoy ourselves. In
Yeah.
terms of going to a yoga class, I totally agree. The barrier to entry can be tough.
Hmm.
Um, it can feel very awkward, intimidating to walk into a yoga studio, especially for men. Like now this is
Yeah.
changing, but I mean, for the most part, yoga studios are like filled with women, filled with hot women in tight pants. Um, you know, and it's a very feminine environment, and that can be very intimidating. I understand for someone who's like very sporty but never gone into yoga, you know, and it
Mhm.
feels awkward. The movements can feel awkward at times, but there are so many different styles of yoga and so many different studios out there. And that's one of the beautiful things of how like saturated the industry is there's really a yoga for everyone. So if you don't like a yoga class that you've tried, try again. I
Mhm.
don't like every single meal I've ever eaten. I'm not going to like every single yoga class I've ever been to. I don't like every restaurant I've ever been into. I don't like every yoga studio I've ever been into. It's the same. So I think that we have to also put it into our minds that this is a very broad practice. And if you didn't like it the first time, try again. And if you're scared, Google a studio that looks like a place you'd want to hang out. I mean, there's like beer yoga.
Yeah.
Like I did yoga in Colorado this summer at a brewery and it was awesome. And I'm like, cool. Like, you don't feel comfortable going to a yoga studio? Go to the brewery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's great advice because I think there are a lot of people that may kind of have that idea, but you're right. There's lots of opportunities and lots of ways to experience it the first time and everything too, or to be able to go a little deeper into something as well. So,
Yeah. I
very
mean, it's
cool.
just like, it's not a one note. Like, I love surfing. I love surfing. Surfing is a bit of a one note. Like, if you didn't like surfing the first time because you don't like being in the ocean
Yeah.
and you don't like getting pummeled by the waves, then you're not probably going to like surfing,
Sure.
right? But like every yoga class, every yoga teacher is so different. Every yoga
Yeah.
studio is so different. There's so many ways to do it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like going for a walk outside and saying I hate walking outside.
Yeah.
Well, where did you walk outside? Did you
Yeah.
walk outside in -30, you know, in the middle of a city like Toronto during a snowstorm? Sure, I wouldn't like that either,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But go walk outside at the sunset in the Pacific Ocean when you're warm. You know, maybe that's a different experience at an empty beach. Maybe that's a different experience of walking outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, okay, so people are probably wanting to know, I mean, if they haven't already looked at some of your stuff, want to know kind of you mentioned the Portugal one coming up. So, I'm sure there's lots of information around kind of retreats and just being able to follow some of the stuff. And you also mentioned, which we'll put in the show notes, how to access the journal and a couple of those things as well. But what are the best ways to kind of follow you and what's happening with the academy as well?
Yeah, so if you are interested in yoga trainings specifically, so
Hmm.
and also don't do a yoga training because you want to be a yoga teacher. Do it because you want to become better friends with yourself and you want to just like go somewhere for 3 weeks and forget about the world and get
Yeah.
into your body and your mind and get stronger. That's why you do it. So Yoga Academy International is the school. It's
Hmm.
easy, yogaacademyinternational.com. And my personal retreats and my personal website is my name, laurenrudick.com.
All right. Okay. And what we'll do is we'll put those in the show notes as well. So if you missed that, just jump in there. If you haven't hit subscribe on the podcast, do that now. We have great people every week, just like Lauren. And again, great conversation, and thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us today, Lauren. This has been really interesting, and I'm sure people took a lot away from it today.
Oh my gosh, Jamie, thank you so much. You really like got a lot out of me that
Well,
most people never have
good.
before.
Well, that's what we try to do, and thanks for being so open and honest with everybody. I mean, I'm sure that that definitely helps with them being able to take more away from the conversation. So, again, good luck on what comes up in the next little while, and I'm sure lots of people will check out your stuff, and we'll keep in touch on that.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. This was really, really a great conversation. Thank you.
Great. All right, and to everybody else, we will talk again soon on Big Idea, Big Moves.